So what are some of the ways in which Allah has made himself known? Firstly is that our very existence indicates ability, that there's a creator with ability. Our very existence indicates that there must have been something, because there's no after effect except that it had a previous effect. In other words, I mean, you can't have a sound system except someone put the sound system here, right? You can't have a universe and a world perfectly proportioned except that something had power. So as soon as a human being touches ground on earth and starts and opens his eyes and thinks, he realizes there's a lot going on in this universe. There are birds, there's an ecosystem, all right? There's soil, there's plants, there's wild animals, there's domesticated animals, there's sun, then there's darkness so that we could rest, then there's moon so we could see a little bit in the dark, okay? So there's so much going on that there must be ability. And we call this ability qudra. This attribute of Allah is called qudra. So this is the first attribute. No human being, if you think about this, whoever rejects that there was something more powerful than us before us, it's really insanity. It's an unacceptable position, untenable position, indefensible position. Secondly, when you look around and you realize this world is not simplistic. It's very complicated and complex. Actually, I should say complex. Okay? It's finely tuned. It possesses the attribute of complexity, which is that a thing requires so much to come together at once, all right? So much has to come together at once that in order to fulfill its function. Okay? It's what we talked about earlier with some of the Khaldun students, Ibn Khaldun students. That complexity is the idea that so many things have to come together all at once in order to fulfill this function. So what does that indicate to us? That indicates to us that this force that has ability also has knowledge. It possesses a great deal of wisdom. I mean, think of zebras. The zebra is one of my favorite examples. If, as we're told, that everything randomly popped together and then just survival of the fittest caused the various mutations, isn't that what we're preached? They preach to us. So then tell me exactly, why is it that the lion is the color of the sand and the zebra stands out, right? It's like a sore thumb. The zebra is black and white, right? So an individual zebra, black and white, standing against a brown savanna, sticks out like a sore thumb. Whereas the lion has no need to delve in or to match with the savanna, but he does. Who is trying to survive here? The zebra or the lion? The lion could be pink. It doesn't matter. He's eating either way, and no one's eating him. And the zebra is the one that needs to be brown. But no, we find the zebra is black and white. So what's the wisdom there? Right? Firstly, it sort of negates their idea of survival of the fittest. But we as Muslims, we're going to say, okay, what was Allah's wisdom in this? Well, you realize that as we know now, and anyone who's observed this phenomenon, okay, knows that cats' eyesight is very bad. Their eyesight is no good. So the best way to be protected, and you need to exist in a herd, is through stripes that together completely make the lion dizzy. This is why a whole herd of zebras can stay together, right? And a lion, all he's going to see is a dizzy thing, a huge mass of black and white. He can't see clearly. The only way that he can eat is when one goes astray from the pack. So now you're telling me that the creation of the zebra and the eyes of the lion are taken into account, right? Are taken into account in this creation, right? The very eyes of the lion and the stripes of the zebra are why this works. And the zebra can exist peacefully with his whole family as long as he doesn't go astray by himself. Yeah, and this khalq, this creation, the more you look at it, the brilliance of it. And the reason people have love is three reasons: beauty, jamal, excellence in a product, and you produce something excellent, ihsan, and then both of them combined, kamal. And in this one example, you see the genius, the brilliance of the idea, right? The idea that this animal just is not enough that it has to be protected from the lion. It needs to stay in its group. And why not be beautiful at the same time, right? And none of the zebras, now this leads us to another thing. So we said qudra, ability. knowledge, ilm. Let's look at the next thing. None of the zebra stripes ever resemble one another. There's no two zebra stripes that have the same image. Every single one is different. There are no two irises, right, human eye, that have the same pattern. There are no two thumbprints with the same pattern. So what does this tell us? This tells us that this creator, until now, we know nothing about him, okay, except that he has ability, okay, he has knowledge, but also he's creating on purpose, as opposed to a mere factory, some force of nature that's spitting out, churning out creations. If it's churning out creations, why do they all look different? Every snowflake is different. What Allah is telling us, He's saying, I am creating on purpose. This is called irada, volition, or willfulness, that He has a will, that this Creator has a will. This Creator is not just spitting things out, astaghfirullah, like a machine, right? Like a factory machine. Factories, human factories, what do we produce when we have a machine, a factory? We produce exactly the same item, right? The same thing. But no, every creation of Allah Ta'ala is unique in itself. So this tells us, just by thinking about it, that He possesses something called irada. Okay, now something cannot possess ability, qudra, knowledge, ilm, volition, irada, and be dead, right? So he must be alive, hayat. He must have life, okay? So he must be alive, hayy. He must be alive. We're not worshiping something dead. And if he's alive, then the very definition of life is the ability to recognize. So now we have, in anything that exists, you have three options. It could be either hearing or deaf, seeing or blind, communicates or it's mute, right? It's going to be one of these three. And if he had any of these three, then how would he have created? Okay? And these would have been defects. Okay? And how can you create sight if you yourself possess no sight? Right? How can you create colors without sight? How can he create sounds without having the faculty of hearing? And how can he communicate? Okay? How can he be, if he was mute, then he'd be defective, then we'd be superior. We can communicate and he can't. So plants can't communicate. So he possesses kalam, speech, the ability to speak. So by our own intellect, these basic attributes come to us, that the Creator has made Himself there for us. So this is the first thing. Now, what about the second thing? Allah Ta'ala describes Himself in the Quran as al-Zahir wal-Batin. What does it mean that He is outwardly manifest but inwardly hidden? It means that outwardly manifest, so to what though? Outwardly manifest relative to what? So relative to the intellect, these 13 attributes, we only listed like 5 or 6. These 13 attributes are apparent to our intellect just by thinking about them. The rest is batin, is hidden from our intellect. For example, you can't think hard enough to know His name. Thinking will not tell you what His name is. Thinking will not tell you what He wants from me. Thinking will not tell us where we came from. Thinking will not tell us where we're going in life. Thinking will not solve our moral problems. So all of that is batin relative to the intellect. But from the perspective of revelation, now revelation comes. And prophets are sent to us, and then they tell us His name is Allah. He was and never had a beginning, never had an end. He created you from nothing. And He wants from you worship. And He has the capacity to love and be loved. Okay? And to know and to be known. And the capacity to give. And the willingness to forgive. And all of these other attributes that we learn solely from prophethood. Okay? So from that angle, all of those things become zahir, manifest through prophethood.